Hey guys, tonight is the last night I'm going to do this thing I've been doing for the summer called Breaking Bad Habits. Been talking about self-control. It's been the idea of all summer, and no one's complained about hearing about self-control, so thank you for not complaining. But it's one of those things, I thought, I'll probably spend 2 or 3 weeks on this. I hope I have enough stuff for 3 weeks. And I just kept digging in more and more. And when I started, I was going to do 6 weeks, and I was like, no, I don't want to make these sermons 30 minutes long. So I started breaking it up more and more. So there's so much that we have to learn about self-control. And I've tried to bring in even brain science and things that I've put into practice in my own life, and self-discipline, delayed gratification, all that stuff, and bring examples into it too from my own life. So tonight, we're going to wrap it up. Now, one thing you might have heard as I've been going through this series is a lot of times I'll compare self-control to a car, or I'll use a car as an illustration. You know, purpose drives self-control. The fuel for self-control is your willpower. I've been using this illustration of a car a few times. Now, I want you to just imagine your dream car for a minute. Just take a moment and just imagine, like, what would your dream car be if I'm sure Mikey and Brady probably have an answer. They probably thought about this, right?
So you ever see one of those?
If you had one dream car, what it would be? Pantera. Oh, okay, Pantera. I want you to imagine something with me for a minute. Just imagine, okay? Let's all stop talking. Just imagine that I gave you your dream car. And I gave it to you, and I said, you can just have this for free. It's yours, but there's one condition. This is the only car that you're ever going to be allowed to own.
Okay.
For your entire life, this one car has got to last you till the day you die. It's the only car you can never have. You can't buy another. Can't sell it. It's your car for forever. This is your car. Now, just imagine for a minute, if I gave you a car on that condition, what you would probably do to maintain that car. You would probably go to the most extreme, like you'd be getting the oil changed regularly. You would be hopefully not driving it like a maniac, because you want to take good care of this thing, because if you lose this car, if you ruin this car, you're out of a car for life. So you're probably going to do everything within your power to maintain this car to the uppermost, correct? Now, the reality is you will probably own several cars over the course of your life. If you're Emily's brother Ben, you will probably own several cars over the course of a month. You'll probably have a lot of cars throughout your life, but here's the thing. You're only going to have one body. You're only going to have one mind. So think about what you're going to do with your body. Are you going to take care of it well, maintain it? Are you going to take care of yourself? Or are you going to burn out your mind on drugs or playing Fortnite all day, every day? Are you going to load up your body on junk food and run it into the ground? Think about these things, because you only have one that's going to have to last you all through your life. And that's why this subject of self-control is so important. So, if you have your bulletin, I want you to turn to the back of it, where we're going to read Matthew 12, 43 through 45. Jesus is going to tell us something about what happens to a lot of people, especially a lot of teenagers, but a lot of people when they have some great spiritual experience. Maybe they have a powerful night at a youth service. Maybe they go to church camp. Maybe they hear a sermon on breaking bad habits. Maybe they make some kind of, could you unplug that for me, please? Thank you. Maybe they make a fresh commitment to God, and they come back from it a little bit changed, but many times the change does not stick. Before long, they go back into the old sin patterns, the things that used to trip them up before. Well, here's something serious that Jesus tells us, that those who come to a knowledge of God's righteousness and then depart from it and fall away from it, Jesus says you're worse off then than you were before. If you start something new, make a commitment, and then you drop off from it, you're worse off the second time than you were before. Matthew 12, starting at verse 43. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest, and finds none. And then he says, I will return from my house which I came. And when he comes, he finds it empty, swept and put in order. And there he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. And they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. So, one thing I want you to notice here from these verses is Jesus warns us that when we fix a part of our lives, okay, as he says, gets the demon out, gets the unclean spirit out. When we fix something in our lives, oftentimes Satan makes a counterattack. He brings back more firepower than what you dealt with before, and he wants to pull you back into that old lifestyle. that old sin, whatever was in that pit, if it was an addiction, a bondage, whatever, and Satan comes back to pull you back in. And Jesus says if you let him pull you back down, you're worse off then than you were before you even started. So it's not just enough to break bad habits, but what we have to do then is fortify ourselves by replacing bad habits with good ones. It's not just enough that we just want to break a bad habit, clean up our life, and call it a day. We actually want to be doing things to keep our lives clean, to fortify ourselves, because our habits actually determine our destiny. I saw this great quote before. If you sow an act, you will reap a habit. If you sow a habit, you will reap a character. If you sow a character, you will reap a destiny. So I want you to ask yourself, what destiny are you creating? What destiny are you creating for yourself? It's not enough just to break bad habits. You got to replace those bad habits with good ones, or else the bad ones are going to come back. If you remember, a few months ago I did a message and I talked about Sigmund Freud and how he had a cocaine problem. If you heard of Freud, this guy is called the father of modern psychology. You know, if you pick up a psychology book, he's probably quoted more than anyone else in this psychology book. He's the most well-known, most often quoted psychologist of all time. This is the guy that when you go to a psychologist, a lot of their therapies and programs are based on the stuff from Sigmund Freud, and he had a cocaine problem, which just blows my mind whenever I found out about this. And he said, hey, if you've got an addiction in your life, if you have an addiction problem, he said, just get you some cocaine, and you'll love that so much, you'll forget about whatever you were addicted to before. Like, that was his therapeutic technique. And this guy is who they call the father of modern psychology. And he himself died of lung cancer from a smoking problem. Do you guys remember when I talked about that, though? There is a way that seems right to a man, an evil Kermit, and crackheads. Yeah, it was from all that. So he was actually correct about this concept that if you have an addiction to something, you can replace it with another addiction. That is one of the best ways to get past one addiction, is to replace it with another. So what I'm proposing tonight is that we don't just break maybe a bad habit or addiction and just try to leave it there, but we try to replace that with something else that's actually a good thing in your life. Because, as Jesus said, you might beat those demons today, but they will be back sometime in the future. They're going to get tired of wandering around. They're going to want you back, and they're going to come back into your life and try to pull you back down to whatever you were before. You try to start some healthy new lifestyle idea. You try to start some new good thing for your life, and Satan doesn't like that. He's going to try to bring you back down a peg where you were before. So you have to get rid of old routines, but then replace them with new good ones. Don't do what Freud did and replace the smoking addiction with cocaine or whatever it is. Don't exchange the demons for new demons. Exchange the demons for something godly. What kind of destiny are you creating for yourself? So, if you have a sin issue that's eating up your life, you need to replace that with God. And I'm going to give you a few ways to do that here. Daily talking to God, daily hearing from God. That's probably the most important one right there. What is daily talking to God? Prayer. What is daily hearing from God? Ears. Reading our Bibles. Every day, I am talking to God. And I'm trying to tell God about everything going on in my life. I want to talk to Him about everything. And I've noticed, if I'm dealing with an issue, but I don't go talk to God about it, that issue tends to linger for quite a while and doesn't get dealt with. Like, sometimes I'm really stupid, and I have an issue, and I'm just not wanting to go talk to God about it. I'm just trying to push it off and say, okay, God, I'll just talk to you about that later. I'm not ready to deal with that now. I'm not ready to do the hard work of dealing with this and making this right. And I might hold on to it for a few weeks or so. But you know what? Until I go to God and talk to God about what I'm dealing with, a lot of times the problem doesn't go away. But daily talking to God, daily hearing from God, that's what helps keep my life clean. That's what helps keep me from going into some sin. I don't want to go into some sin at 2 o'clock if I know I'm going to be talking to God later on about 6 o'clock. Because if I do the sin at 2 o'clock, then that's going to make things a little awkward when I talk to God at 6 o'clock. So it helps keep my life clean. You know, when I have daily time with God, daily talking to God, daily hearing from God, it helps me to keep my life clean. I was talking to a person, and this was years ago. It's not someone in here, but I was talking to someone in the youth group, and he had gotten into a bad lifestyle choice of having sex with his girlfriend. And I know this might sound weird. He didn't know how to stop. Like, he did not know how to fix this problem. I know that sounds weird, but he had settled into this new routine in his life, and he had opened that door, and he didn't know how to close the door. And so he was like, well, how do I fix this? And I said, what you got to do is start having daily time with God, daily talking to God, daily hearing from God. And whenever you are every day having an actual personal relationship with God at one part of the day, it helps keep you from wanting to go into a sin in another part of the day. It really works. So start talking to God every day. Start hearing from God every day. You know, it's sad to say there are pastors out there who've had affairs, and I hear about these things because, you know, I'm a pastor, I'm in that world. And there's pastors who've had affairs. And there was a survey done of pastors. It's not like there's a whole big bunch of them, but there was a survey done of pastors who've had affairs. And they said, at the time that you had your affair, were you maintaining your daily devotion time with God? Daily devotions meaning prayer and Bible study. Were you still doing that in your life? They were saying, were you still maintaining your daily quiet time with God? 99% of them said no, I had cut that out. I had cut off the daily quiet times with God. And then they ended up having an affair. Daily talking to God, daily hearing from God, it helps keep our lives clean. I talked to you before about Teen Challenge, and this is the drug recovery program that's Christian-based, which has a lot more success than these state-run programs. And I told you a few months ago, I was talking to a guy at Teen Challenge, or I was emailing him or calling him on the phone, and I said, I heard this before, what is the percentage of success rate for Teen Challenge for people who go through the program? And he said it's 70 to 80% success rate for Teen Challenge. And I said, okay, and what is that compared to like state-run programs that are just like, they're not Christian or anything, they're just run by the government, they don't tell you about Jesus or anything, they're just, you know, what the state puts out. And he said about 2 to 4%. And I was so shocked, I emailed him back and I said, did you mean like 20 to 40%? And he emailed me back, no, 2 to 4% success rate in the state-run drug treatment programs. But Teen Challenge, an Assemblies of God drug treatment program, has at least a 70% success rate. Now, what is the difference in Teen Challenge and a government program? Jesus. Part of the Teen Challenge program is they are teaching the young men, and now they have it for women too. They're teaching the young men and women to have daily conversations with God, daily talking to God, daily hearing from God. And it helps them get their lives straightened out. And at least 70 to 80% of the time, they don't go back into the drugs or alcohol or whatever brought them there. So that is really when I'm talking about starting a good habit, this is the best one. If you remember nothing else, I want you to remember, I got to be talking to God every day. I got to be hearing from God every day. Okay? Does not matter if you're the youth pastor or in the youth. It's for everybody. Okay? For everybody, we want to be talking to and hearing from God every day. Now, here's the second thing. We talked about how willpower is limited. We've talked about that several times. Emily said before, I know willpower is limited because I used up all mine just getting out of bed this morning. So willpower is a limited resource. If we use it up by noon, we aren't going to have any left for the rest of the day. But we did talk about this summer how you can grow it and strengthen it through prayer, through not procrastinating. It's like a muscle, and you can grow that muscle of willpower. Well, here's the second key for starting good habits is harness your willpower. I learned recently about this wonderful story in the book Frog and Toad Together. Now, I'm not going to read the whole book to you, but there's one section that I was really, really impressed by. In chapter 3, Frog and Toad discover the limits of willpower while baking cookies. Has anyone ever heard of Frog and Toad?
Yes.
Okay. So Frog and Toad, and I'm not going to read you the whole thing, said, we ought to stop eating, they say, as they keep eating. We must stop, they resolve, as they eat some more. We need willpower, Frog finally said, grabbing another cookie. What is willpower? Asked Toad, swallowing another mouthful. Willpower is trying very hard not to do something you want to do very much, Frog says. And then they start trying all kinds of things to stop eating the cookies, to try and putting them out of reach and all kinds of stuff. But they keep going back to those cookies. Finally, they just dump all the cookies out on the ground for the birds to just pick up and fly away with, and that's how they're going to deal with their problem. Now we have no more cookies, says Toad sadly. Yes, says Frog, but we have lots and lots of willpower. You may keep it all, Toad replies. I'm going home to bake a cake. Now, there's a little bit of wisdom right there. If you replace your cookies with the cake, it's like we were saying earlier, it's like replacing the smoking with the cocaine, as Freud said to do. You know, you're just exchanging one bad habit for another. So what we want to do is replace the bad habits with good ones. Who here has heard of making New Year's resolutions? Has anyone ever heard of this before? And I was learning this week, when people make New Year's resolutions, 80% of the time, those resolutions are broken by February. Now, when I heard that, I thought, only 80%? I figured it would be higher than that. But honestly, most people just stick with them a week or two. When I've been working at the gym this past year, and I remember in January, it flooded with people, and then 2 weeks later, they were all gone. Because everyone made this New Year's resolution to go to the gym, apparently. But no one sticks with it. 80% of the time, New Year's resolutions are broken by February. And then it said by the end of the year, 92% of them have been broken. So only 8% of New Year's resolutions carry through for the entire year. Now, why do we have trouble? Why do we have trouble keeping our New Year's resolutions? I'll tell you why. Because we make New Year's resolutions. We make multiple, right? People pick like 5 things they want to work on for the new year. And we try to fix multiple things. We try to start multiple new good habits. And what that does, it actually divides up your willpower among a bunch of different things. And it's all scattered around, and that's why we can't stick with any of them. Because we've divided up our willpower among a bunch of different things. What we need to do is harness our willpower and focus on one thing at a time. Maybe you want to stop a bad habit, start a diet, get your cussing under control, learn a new language, stop procrastinating, start a Bible reading routine, beat an addiction to a phone app. All these different things. Pick just one to focus on. Pick just one thing that you want to make a difference in. And once you get that down, then you move on to another. But that's harnessing your willpower, focusing on one thing at a time. Do you remember when I talked about Ben Franklin and how he had tried to become a perfect human? Does anybody remember that? And he identified 13 areas of his life to work on, which, of course, you can't not actually become a perfect human. It was a fool's errand. But he did do one smart thing about it. He only focused on one of them at a time. And that is actually the right way to do it. Focus on one thing at a time in your life. That's the only way you're going to actually get progress in your life. Harness your willpower. Here's another thing. People call this the vicious cycle. It's whenever you are triggered by something, and I don't mean triggered like how you guys use triggered all the time. I mean triggered like something triggers a bad behavior in yourself, okay? We all have triggers to different bad behaviors. It could be to tempers or whatever. So something triggers you, and then you do that bad behavior, and then you receive some kind of reward from it. Sometimes people feel good after their temper tantrum. Someone feels good after they eat that whole box of cookies, okay? And then they feel the reward, and it becomes what's called the vicious cycle, where they just keep doing it again and again and again. So here's what I'm going to tell you tonight. I'm going to coin this. Turn it into the victorious cycle, where your trigger triggers you to do a good thing, and then you do the behavior, and then you reward yourself for it, and that often helps you to start a new good habit in your life. If you're trying to start a new good habit in your life, one of the best things you can do is reward yourself every time you do it. Like we do whenever we train a dog. We give him a treat, right? And Marty knows the word candy because he's going to get a strip of bacon or something like that when he does what we say. He can even spell it now. If we just try to spell it around him, he knows what that is. So, I told you guys.
Spelling it backwards.
So how do I trigger myself into a healthy good habit? Well, I told you I started a new exercise routine, and here is my trigger to going to the gym regularly. I try to go 3 times a week, and my trigger is I put on my gym clothes. I have some specific clothes that I only wear to the gym. I don't wear them to do anything else. I only wear them for going to the gym, and I take them off whenever I get home and put on something else. They are just my gym clothes. Now, even if I get up and I don't feel like going to the exercise place and doing hard work, I go ahead and put on my gym clothes, and what I do then is I start feeling like I'm ready to go to the gym. Why is that? Because our brains are kind of like, they're like association machines. Our brains make associations when you hear smells, when you hear smells, When you hear sounds, when you smell a certain smell, it triggers memories for you, right? Because our brains associate all of our senses with other things that we've experienced before. Putting on my gym clothes, I start to feel a little bit more athletic. I start feeling kind of in the mood to go to the gym. Our brains are association machines, so be careful what you let your brain associate with. You can actually associate it with doing good things. So I put on my gym clothes. That triggers me into feeling like going to the gym. I go to the gym. That's my routine. And then I reward myself every time when I'm done. What's my reward every time I go to the gym, boys?
Oh, smoothie.
Every time I'm done at the gym, I go to the tropical smoothie and I get myself a smoothie.
And what about when we come back from the gym? So what the heck?
If you have some money, you can buy yourself a smoothie. So I go and I reward myself every single time. And I have trained myself, literally like a dog, I've trained myself to going to the gym on a regular basis. And I just can't wait to do it the next time. Because I'm like, okay, I'm going to put those clothes on, I'm going to feel good, and I'm going to get a smoothie when I'm done. And that's how you build a long-term habit, is you reward yourself. Our brains are association machines, but I just told you how to program your brain. So you know what, guys? It really works. You can train yourself. I just told you how, so you can do it. Your brain's an association machine. Let me wrap this up. Remember, I called this series Getting Control of You. Or I call it Breaking Bad Habits, but it says on there. How to get control of you. Guys, what destiny are you creating? You have one body. You have one mind. What are you going to do with it? And I was in a recent ministry class, and the teacher, pastor of Oak Grove Assembly up in Springfield, his name is Ron Moran. He said this quote. I thought, this is great. I'm going to use this in my series. I have found the enemy, and it is me. Until I master me, I can't master anything else. And when he said that, he was talking about creating a habit of prayer. That's what he was actually talking about right then. Creating a habit of prayer in your life. I have found the enemy, and it is me. Until I master me, I can't master anything else. Who's ever heard that it takes 21 days to create a new habit? Has anyone ever heard that before? That's the commonly said thing about habits. Scientists have studied this, and they actually say, on average, it's about 66 days, according to science. You can remember that by there's 66 books in the Bible. And if you do something for about 66 days, it'll be built into you, second nature, as a habit. I want you guys to remember this as you are creating new good habits in your life. Remember what we read in our verses, that when you start to create a new good habit, when you try to leave something old behind, the devil comes after you. He brings more firepower than before. He brings his counterattack, and he wants you to get pulled back into whatever you were doing before. He wants to keep you from making a healthy new choice in your life and maintaining it. Especially probably as you get closer to that 66th day, he probably starts coming against you, trying to do anything to keep you from having your breakthrough. I want you to think for yourselves, what can I do in 66 days? What could I do in my life in 66 days? Because 66 days from now, it's going to come, whether you've been working on creating a great new habit for yourself or not. 66 days is going to come. What can you do with that 66 days? And then what can you do for 66 days after that? Because the answer to those questions determines what kind of destiny you're creating for yourself. If you sow an act, you'll reap a habit. If you sow a habit, you'll reap a character. If you sow a character, you'll reap a destiny. So, what destiny are you creating for yourself? We are going to close up there. Hey guys, thanks for being at church. Thanks for being at church in July, which is like the lowest month of attendance in youth. But I'm great. It's great to see you guys here. You guys have been doing it awesome. You really all have had great attendance. So I want to pray. Lord God, help this summer series of Breaking Bad Habits. Help it to sink in. God, help it to solidify in our minds that we can leave old things behind, that we can start new, good, healthy routines in our lives, new spiritual patterns in our lives that's going to build a better destiny for us, put us on a great path. And you've given us the keys to do it, God. So I pray that we wouldn't let those keys go to waste, but we would use them. And I pray that we'd go home safely tonight and bring us back safely next time. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.